Howdy do! Today I'm going to show you a spread that you can make for your bullet journal if you're also doing National Novel Writing Month. And this is something that I've taken pieces of from various quadrants of the internet. I think the person who explains it the best is K.M. Weiland. Of course, I mean, there's a million different, not a million. There are probably a dozen different articles out there that you can find on the lie the character believes, which is very important for your character development, and I believe it's something that you should address before you start writing a novel. But if you've already begun, it's never too late to have a review of where your characters are going. So, in my little diagram, I broke it up into 5 areas, and I'm not starting in any particular order. The thing that you need to know to begin with is, what is the lie your character believes about himself or the world when your story starts out? And if you think about it, every good story has this. The story will open with a character who is living out a lie of some kind. Let's think of Ebenezer Scrooge. In the beginning of A Christmas Carol, Ebenezer Scrooge thinks that people are essentially greedy, selfish, and they don't deserve charity. And by the end of it, he converts and he is himself generous and charitable. And nobody ever thinks of him as a convert, but he is. Anyhow, in the course of your story, there should be some kind of revelation, not internal, but external. An external force should compel your character to make an internal change. So, in essence, your character will eventually become the best version of himself or herself. That's why we read. We want to see that arc. So in my diagram, I've made a section of my snake because what better shape to put a diagram in than in the shape of the first beguiler. So the first section is his head, and that is to open your story with a painful lie that your character is coming up against. That could be any number of things, but you know how they say, like, open with a hook? Whatever your hook is should illustrate the lie that your character is living. Be it, oh, he got turned down by somebody, and oh, guess what, he always asks out the wrong type of person for him, or he sets himself up for failure, or whatever it may be. But when you're deciding on that opening image, try to involve this lie that your character believes. And then, okay, so that's the opening. Then you need your inciting incident, which is pretty much what will force your character to make a decision to cross the threshold into the unknown. And that will also relate to the lie that they believe, because they will be reluctant to go on their journey because they don't think they have it in them, or they don't want to. So this middle section, I think, is the most useful when you're planning out a story. Try to brainstorm symptoms of the lie that your character believes. And that is random scenes that pop in your head when you think of your character living out this lie that illustrate how wrong he is. Like, how does this lie affect his life? Or how does he behave because he or she is living this lie? And then the next part of this diagram, and by the way, this diagram, it's what they call a collection for a bullet journal. It's mainly a reference. I would actually use this if I were preparing my National Novel Writing Month novel, planning it out. I would turn to this collection page and then look at all the parts, and then using another notebook, I would sketch out all of the answers to these questions, like what is the lie that my character believes in? How can I open the story that shows him living out this lie? What would be a few of the symptoms, and then what would be a rough sketch of a few scenes that would illustrate this, and then also the deficits. How is the lie hurting him? And this is one of those things, you know, the old saying, like, insanity is when you keep doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. Your character will probably come up against making the same types of mistakes because of this lie that he's living. And then, of course, at the tail end, it's at the top, it's the lie itself. That's probably the first thing you should address when you're planning out your story is, what is this lie? I personally find that thinking about these types of questions are much more useful than doing some Proustian questionnaire like, oh, what does your character eat for breakfast in the morning and what's inside his closet or his sock drawer? That's fine. If you enjoy that type of thing, go ahead and knock yourself out. But for me, that is not helpful to developing a story. I never get to know who my characters are more intimately by doing that because it's, to me, personally, I find it superficial. And also, I mean, I've done these things. I can say this because I've actually done these things. I've made notebooks. I've made dossiers. I've spent time working through these things, and they don't work for me. And in hindsight, I realized that making all these dossiers was really just resistance. I wasn't trying to get deep into my story. I was trying to avoid getting deep into my story by doing these superficial questionnaires. However, this lie exercise I think is very helpful, and I hope it's helpful to you.